Welcome aboard, folks. We are back for UFC Sao Paulo with a quick card breakdown show. And the main event of the evening, we have Jailton Almeida taking on Derek Lewis in what should be one of the shortest bouts in heavyweight history. But beyond that, there are a number of Brazilian fighters who will be taking to the octagon, and they'll be meeting their foes inside of the 8-sided octagon. We have 10 out of 12 fights are currently favored to end inside the distance. And believe it or not, there is still another fight with Elvis Brenner taking on a new opponent. And that fight, we don't have odds to end inside the distance, but I believe that one may not hit the scorecards. But let's get things kicked off, shall we, with the first fight of the evening, where we have Kaue Fernandes, LFA fighter, taking on Mark Diakiese. Mark Diakiese coming in as the minus 185 betting favorite in a spot where you look back at Mark Diakiese and the way he's conducted himself. He's been hit or miss many times inside the octagon. You're never really sure what you're going to get. Granted, the wrestling was put into effect against Joel Alvarez. Unfortunately, there was a headbutt in that fight. But then you look back at the Michael Johnson fight, and goodness gracious, as I've said many times before, Mark Diakiese couldn't get his wrestling going and really ran into some issues there. And he's been a bit of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of fighter. And you look at the other side of the fight here with Kaue Fernandes, who is long, he's dangerous, he gets in and out of the pocket and can land some devastating strikes, especially early. And believe you me, this fight is in Brazil, and I suspect the crowd will be on his side here. Mark Diakiese, he's his own worst enemy. He should and has, you look at the skill level here. Both of these fighters started their professional career back in 2013, mind you. Diakiese has fought by leaps and bounds the better competition here. He has much more mileage on the odometer. And he also, you look at the Rafael Alves fight, there have been many times where he's just dropped the bag, he's fumbled the bag. So I don't personally have a play on this fight, but I'm going to be picking Diakiese. The problem here is we've seen Diakiese be his worst enemy here, his own worst enemy. So it's a dangerous spot. And if you did get in on Diakiese, I believe the minus 120 or minus 130 was the spot, but dangerous spot here. Second fight of the night. The ladies take to the octagon. We've got Eduarda Moura taking on Montserrat Ruiz. Ruiz coming off of some lackluster performances, but look at who she was in there against. Almeida-Lewis. Almeida-Lewis blew her out of the water. We saw what happens when Ruiz fights legitimate competition. She can't get that head and arm throw on everybody. And earlier today, I tweeted out, show me an example of an effective head and arm throw in action in mixed martial arts. And we've seen it in women's mixed martial arts traditionally, from the highest level to the lowest level, effective to this day in 2023. Is she going to be able to pull that off here against Eduarda Moura? I don't think so. Moura, it's amazing. Her professional career started in 2022, and she's rattled off a number of victories. She also has suffered defeat on the regional scene. Granted, she's a finisher by trade. I believe she's had 7 first-round finishes, if I'm correct here. Let me just double-check that. Yeah, 7 first-round finishes for Moura. And you watch the way she competes. She's extremely aggressive. She goes for the kill. And this is one of those fights where I've been looking at not only the fight doesn't go the distance number, but also Moura inside the distance. I believe that she does have what it takes to get the job done. And you also look at who she fights for and with. And there are a number of fighters on her team who are competing on this specific card. So I think that is something to be aware of here. Ruiz, she's no spring chicken. She's in her mid-30s here. So I believe she's been a lamb brought to the slaughter here, and Moura inside the distance is going to be the pick, and I'll be looking possibly to make a play there. All right, let's see. We've got Grateful Dude. Looking forward to this one. Great. 8-sided octagon. Who knew, right? Captain Obvious is here. Are you a fan of Santino, DeFranco, and Brandon? Yes, I believe they do great work. In fact, I'm headed out to Phoenix next week. So possibly be touching base with them, although I believe Brandon's got a fight coming up next week as well in Milwaukee. So want to wish him the best personally. Chronic Combat, yes, we will be, I believe I'll be joining your broadcast soon, hitting the airwaves over there. Got a number of guest appearances in the near future and looking forward to it. So thank you for inviting me on board. I appreciate you. So let's get back to these fights here. We've got Angela Hill, who's now 38 years of age, and she's taking on Denise Gomes. Denise Gomes coming in as the minus 135 betting favorite. We've seen this line slide around a little bit here, and Angela Hill, she's getting up there in age, but she also is a seasoned veteran, and she will fraud check you. That is a word that the young spry folks, the hipsters, are using around here, and I am a believer in it right now because you do see it happening. Now, is Angela Hill going to be able to fraud check Denise Gomes? That is the question. She caught Lupita Godinez at the right time. Lupita Godinez was coming off of the Carnello fight, the Carnelosi fight, where she suffered an injury and took that fight on short notice at catchweight. Wasn't able to get her wrestling going against Angela Hill, and we saw what happened in that specific bout. But we've got Denise Gomes here, who is coming off of a win against a fighter where she was a plus 300 underdog, I believe, last time again out against Yurgari, the Jaguar, and you saw that Gomez can crack, and she's done it against Bruna Silva as well. Angela Hill is going to look to stick and move, and also she's comfortable engaging in the clinch. But I also believe that at this stage in Angela Hill's game, we have an issue here. We have an issue fighting in Brazil against a young opponent who's 23 years of age, who's going to be coming in to take her head off. And Denise Gomes, I mean, she put Loma Luke Boonmi in some tough spots. Luke Boonmi was supposed to come in and roll there. I couldn't get that done. Whew. I think the youngster here is going to shine and walk away with the victory. Now, I understand why folks are playing Angela Hill. Angela Hill, a seasoned veteran, somebody who's been in there against the who's who up and down the roster. But Denise Gomes, I have visions that she gets this done, and I believe that she could potentially get a finish here, to be honest. Do you think Gomez has the same power as Lemos? She cracked Yurgari hard, but Hill also did fine against Lemos, who is the Derek Lewis of the division. Now, I also go back to Angela Hill's last fight against Mackenzie Dern, where she was getting teed off on, and I mean teed off on. Angela Hill, there's a shelf life for everybody in the sport, not only in this life in general, but also in the fight game. And I think that Denise Gomes, although she's not a high-level fighter, that it may not take much at this stage in the game to take Angela Hill out of there. So the pick is going to be Denise Gomes. Now, we've got a short notice fight between Brenner-Kruschewsky taking on Elvis Brenner. Elvis Brenner minus 186 at the betting window. And you saw Elvis Brenner take out Kudladze last time out. That was very impressive. He was able to go deep, and we know that the shoot box fighters, they do not mess around in there. And you watch Kruschewsky, I saw his fight against Thierry on the regional scene. I believe he went 5 rounds there and finished the fighter in the 5th round. I also watched his Contender Series bout where he came in as a minus 250 underdog. And Kruschewsky's a competent fighter, long. He's somebody who's going to pick his spots, and we love fighters who pick their spots. But in this fight, I think we're looking at a dog fight here, and this line has closed a little bit. I do understand why that's happening. I just believe that Brenner was supposed to fight Daniel Santos, right? Headed into this matchup. That bout didn't come to fruition. And here we are. Kruschewsky is a live underdog in this spot. But when fighters get pushed, and we saw Brenner get pushed against Kutaladze last time out, he came out the other side victorious. And I believe that Kruschewsky taking this fight on short notice, that could be a detriment to him. I'll be picking Elvis Brenner here, but I see Kruschewsky. He's a finisher by trade also. I think that he's going to be live here. But give me Elvis Brenner. Next up, where we have Rinat Fakhretdinov taking on Alessio Zaleski Dos Santos. Dos Santos coming in as the plus 290 underdog, and we saw he was able to come out the other side victorious last time out in enemy territory. I believe he did that in Abu Dhabi. That was a very impressive performance by Zaleski Dos Santos. He beat Abubakar Nurmagomedov, and very impressive there. Although I know there are some folks out there who thought that was a controversial decision. I think that Dos Santos did enough. And you also look back, I know he fought a lightweight when he beat Benoit Saint Denis, but impressive performance there as well. Now, Dos Santos, we've seen him lose against Muslim Salikov and Rinat Fakhretdinov. He beat Kevin Lee, and he is a fighter who is going to come out and get his wrestling going. It's interesting. I believe Fakhretdinov has a bit of a reach advantage here, and you watch the fight against Brian Battle where he really put it on. Rinat Fakhretdinov put it on Brian Battle and kind of exposed him on the mat. That was impressive. Now, is Fakhretdinov going to be able to make that happen here? The odds suggest that that's the case. But I also have to be honest with myself and realize that Zaleski Dos Santos can land some of those capoeira spinning attacks, as we've seen him do many times in the past. And Zaleski Dos Santos, we know he has a win over Sean Strickland. Granted, I believe it was at 170 pounds a while ago, so he wasn't necessarily the champion. But I'm not totally counting out Dos Santos here, especially also something that we need to consider is that he's fighting from the same camp with Jailton Almeida, with Eduardo Moura, with Vitor Petrino. We've got a bunch. The stable of fighters are coming here to get it on with their opponents, and I'm not there as far as over a minus 300 bet on Rinat Fakhretdinov. I do believe that he will likely do enough here and ground Alessio Zaleski Dos Santos, but it may run into some adversity. So the pick's going to be Fakhretdinov, and I believe that he is going to grind out a decision victory here. Let's see. We've got a few. As you mentioned, fraud check. Was Lemos fraud checked in Boston by Weili Zhang? Was Volkanovski fraud checked by Islam? No, I don't. I believe those are high level fighters. When is the appropriate term to use fraud check? Is Rinat a candidate to get fraud checked if he loses to Dos Santos? Yes, I believe that would be considered a fraud check if Alessio Zaleski Dos Santos is able to walk out the other side victorious. But I'm not going to bank on it here. I think that Fakhretdinov, we've seen his ability to get the grind going, and he has been able to embrace the grind, and he's shown cardio for 15 minutes. So impressive there by him. Now, we've got Vitor Petrino taking on Modestas Bukauskas. I put out a video a couple of days ago, about Vitor Petrino, and that I believe that he is the rightful favorite here, taking on Modestas Bukauskas, who is sitting at plus 195 at the betting window. Bukauskas is a fighter who will fight hard for your money. No doubt he will. He's what our friend Z's MMA would have called a good soldier. And you have Bukauskas here who, granted, he's taken losses to Jimmy Crute where he was brutally knocked out. Then you also had his loss to Lord Michael, and you saw he also took a loss to Khalil Roundtree. And those fights were something to behold, but then he rattled off 4 consecutive victories in a row. And he's done so in short order. And the last fight Bukauskas had was against Zach Pauga. I keep going back to that. Zach Pauga, that performance left a lot to be desired. At one point, Zach Pauga was actually the betting favorite and with under a minute to go. And if you're fighting tooth and nail that close to Zach Pauga, that's a dangerous recipe. Also, the Bukauskas fight against Tyson Pedro, that was, hey, looked like a great victory at face value. Then you hear about behind the scenes, Tyson Pedro was really dealing with some gastrointestinal issues for after weigh-ins, before weigh-ins, etc., and barely made it to the fight. You saw how completely gassed. By the way, great stat for y'all. Tyson Pedro has yet to win a fight that's gone beyond 5 minutes. That is wild. And we saw he lost against Modestas Bukauskas. And then let's talk about the other side of the fight here too. We've got Vitor Petrino, who is, man, I've mentioned this before in the breakdown. He's a tank. He's a fighter who is powerful. He is even larger than Jailton Almeida. I was reading that Petrino carries around more weight, that he has to cut a tremendous amount of weight to make the 205, the light heavyweight division. And he's fighting Bukauskas is fighting an animal here, someone who's going to come out and try to take his head off. And if he can't take his head off, Petrino's got a solid chin. He also has a wrestling game that has been pretty impressive for a Brazilian striker. You watch his team that he trains under, they have some solid jiu-jitsu, and Petrino, he's going to have his coaches year. He'll have the crowd, the Sao Paulo crowd. That's going to be a huge factor, I believe, in this event over the weekend. So personally, I've invested very heavily in Vitor Petrino. I believe that he's not only the rightful favorite, but he could win this fight a few different ways. He could knock Bukauskas out. We've seen that happen in reality, but also as far as the fight against Zach Pauga, I believe Pauga was able to drop Bukauskas early in the first minute or so. And we saw against Anton, Petrino was reversing positions on the mat, and Turkalj is a fighter who is somebody who's known for their grappling, and Petrino was able to reverse and take advantage of Turkalj. And watch Petrino. He's got a decent gas tank. He can pace himself, and he can lay the lumber when he needs to. So the pick here is going to be Vitor Petrino, and I'll be picking him. Man, he could win this a few different ways. He could win by submission, he could win by knockout, or he could win by decision. But I think that he's going to win this fight by knockout. I don't trust Bukauskas's chin. He's left it on a platter many, many times. And Bukauskas, great story coming back after those brutal injuries. Let's see. Do you think Bukauskas will be okay after a very scary knee injury? Because, well, he's rattled off 4 consecutive victories after that. Let's see. Seems like a career altering. Well, he's came back. He came back. So the pick's going to be Vitor Petrino. Now, this is an interesting matchup. We have a short notice replacement here for Daniel Marcos. He's taking on Victor Hugo, who is coming in as the plus 200 underdog. And Hugo, we know he's a submission master here. He's somebody who's coming in with, I believe, let's see, I wrote down the amount of submissions. All right, Victor Hugo, 10 submissions, 7 knockouts, and he hasn't lost since 2014. That's something to that's an eye opener right there. And then you look at Daniel Santos. Oh, Marcos was supposed to fight Daniel Santos. Daniel Marcos was supposed to fight Daniel Santos, and you watch Marcos here, and Marcos is coming in with a 21 fight winning streak, which is very, very, very impressive. And by the way, I just want to go back quickly and look at a fight that was supposed to take place. Let me just go back to Elvis Brenner here. 1 second. Bear with me. Because I know that Daniel Santos was supposed to fight Marcos. And you have... okay, yes. So Esteban Ribovic was supposed to be Elvis Brenner's opponent. So I'm glad I was able to correct myself there. So in this fight, though, Daniel Marcos, the striker, Victor Hugo, the grappler, and Victor Hugo, we saw in the Contender Series, is going to go for it. He's going to try to chain submission attempts together until he finds one. And Marcos, he can throw on the feet. He can throw with mean intentions. And he's a finisher by trade also. He's got decent cardio coming off of the victory over Davy Grant. And that was a very close fight, the Daniel Marcos Davy Grant fight. If you could let me know in the comments section who you thought won that fight. Did you think it was the correct decision by the judges? But in this fight, I think that Hugo is live here. I think he's a live underdog, taking this fight on short notice, extremely confident. Both of these fighters have rattled off a number of victories in a row and are here to throw down. So the pick, man, I'm tempted to pull the trigger on an underdog play on Victor Hugo here, but I believe that Victor Hugo is going to come out here and cause Daniel Marcos some fits on the mat. The Peruvian fighter, give me the underdog here, and I think that he's going to carry that momentum into this fight. I know both of them are carrying a tremendous amount of momentum in there. I thought Davy Grant won that fight. All right. So James, you feel that Davy won that fight? Interesting. And Sammy, are short notice just as volatile as low level women's MMA fights? Are underdogs live in this situation, like Dariush versus Hernandez? Yeah, short answer, yes. What it comes down to is the less time to prepare, and then also, if you're an underdog and you have a small window of opportunity, if you're able to throw everything you got at your opponent and be unconventional, unorthodox, then you're dangerous. So yes, I believe that short notice replacement fighters are dangerous. And I believe that wholeheartedly. Now, let's talk Ismail-Bonfim taking on Vince Pichel. Vince Pichel coming in as the plus 390 underdog. And he's a fighter who is closing in on his 41st birthday, Vince Pichel. He's had a long run. Feather in his cap is going to decision with Gregor Gillespie. I believe that fight was up in Albany. I was upstate New York, I believe. And by the way, Gregor Gillespie, we'd love to have you back inside of the UFC's octagon. I miss seeing him compete. That gas tank, the wrestling that he has, and also a local fighter. Unfortunately, we haven't seen him, and it's been quite some time. So he's taking on Vince Pichel is taking on Ismail-Bonfim. Now, Pichel has traditionally trained at altitude, has typically a solid gas tank, but he's coming off of these hip injuries, and I have big questions for Pichel here against Ismail-Bonfim, who just took a loss against Benoit Saint-Denis and is going to be foaming at the mouth here. This fight takes place in Brazil. Both Bonfim brothers are competing. And watch the Terrence McKinney fight back. You saw Bonfim can be technical. He can be precise. He does have killer instinct. And I'm a believer in Ismail-Bonfim. I believe that he just ran up against somebody. I mean, you saw how highly skilled Benoit Saint-Denis is. And by the way, Benoit Saint-Denis takes on Matt Frivola at Madison Square Garden, I believe, next weekend. And that should be, man, the roof is going to pop when both of those fighters make the walk. But in this spot, the pick is going to be Ismail-Bonfim. I believe that he has Vince Pichel beat in a number of areas. Maybe he doesn't necessarily have the wrestling, but beyond that, the gas tank, I think that second and third round. I know Pichel is tough as nails, but when you're closing in on 41, everybody has a shelf life. And Bonfim, I believe, is 26 or so. Going to be picking Ismail Bonfim to get this done, and it would not surprise me to see him get this done inside the distance. Next up, where we have Rodolfo Vieira taking on Armen-Petrosyan. Armen-Petrosyan coming as both of these fighters, minus 110 across the board. This is a very interesting bout. Petrosyan is a fighter who is a striker by trade. He's been able to survive some tough positions against Caio Borralho, and he is a fighter who, once he gets going, also against Gregory Rodriguez, he survived. I believe I was up in Lake Placid in the middle of the winter watching that fight on my phone, walking across Mirror Lake. And I was watching these two fighters beat the hell out of each other. And I was wondering why Rodriguez was not going to the mat and utilizing his ground game. And you know that Rodolfo Vieira is going to do that. He's a submission or bust typical type of fighter, and Vieira is going to come at you. He's going to look to take that back like he's done so many times before. It's like second nature, finding the back, applying the choke, getting the tap. It's like clockwork. But if he's unable to get a tap here, Petrosyan becomes live. And there's a short window of opportunity here for Rodolfo Vieira, and possibly a very short window of opportunity. So, man, I believe that Vieira is live, especially early. I want to see how these fighters look tomorrow morning at the weigh-ins. I believe that Rodolfo Vieira, he's coming in close to 35 years of age, and he's making this cut down to 185 pounds. He's had a really tough time doing this in the past. Man, Petrosyan's live. If this hits the second round, Petrosyan's going to be extremely live here. I'll be picking Rodolfo Vieira to win, but I do not have much confidence in that play. And that's one thing I also have to mention here is across the timeline, you watch many different breakdowns by all sorts of folks across the spectrum. And you like to hear folks who have conviction in their voice and really believe what they're saying. But also, I believe folks have to be honest with themselves. And this fight is not a certainty. There are no certainties in this game. I believe you need to take an honest look at each side of each fight and understand what each fighter presents and what they bring to the table. Let's see. What's your opinion of Vieira's very poor takedowns, where his posture's bent over at the waist? Hey, I will say that Vieira, he will run you to the fence trying to land his double leg, and he's able to. Granted, he wasn't able to do it against Curtis, but he could potentially do it here. Petrosyan's been taken down before. I believe that he could potentially get taken down again. If this fight hits the second round, I'm going to be all over Petrosyan live from a live perspective here. I don't believe in Vieira's gas tank. This is another fight, though, that's taking place in Brazil. So it's something that we have to consider. But I don't think this one's hitting the scorecards. Vieira is going to be running on fumes about the 6 or 7 minute mark. And if Petrosyan is able to stuff any of these takedowns in the second round, you'll see Petrosyan completely take over and probably finish Vieira. But I'll be picking Vieira to win. I think that the most likely outcome here is Rodolfo Vieira via submission, and likely in the first round. But dangerous spot, very volatile spot. Check the numbers on those on the odds for that play. Next up, we've got Caio Borralho taking on Abus Magomedov. Magomedov coming in as the plus 245 underdog. And Borralho, we know he has the fight nerd tattoo. He's a fighter who is an intelligent fighter inside of the octagon. He's going to fight to his strengths. He doesn't necessarily deviate from them much. He's someone who's going to try to take the back of his opponent, but it's a dangerous proposition to close distance on Abus Abus Magomedov. That is a dangerous proposition. He's going to have to do that with precision, and I believe it's going to take a lower tier attack. I don't believe he should engage in the stand-up much at all. I know you have to keep your opponent honest, but I am avoiding. Well, if I was Caio Borralho, I would be avoiding any entanglement up top. And I believe that Borralho, he's got a huge advantage here as far as the gas tank goes. Not only have we seen Abus Magomedov run into some energy regulation issues against Sean Strickland, but also on the regional scene as well. He's met some resistance, and I know he's got a tremendous record. I believe he has many wins, 25 wins. That's very impressive to have that accomplishment at this stage in the game and come so close to fighting for a UFC title. That was incredible that he was put in a position against Sean Strickland. But in this spot, Borralho, as soon as he's able to close distance and wrap Magomedov up, I don't trust Magomedov's gas tank. I don't trust Magomedov's takedown defense. I don't trust Magomedov's get-up game. One thing I do trust, though, is Magomedov's stand-up and striking technique is extremely impressive. So I'm going to be picking Caio Borralho here, but Abus Magomedov is potentially live if these two fighters are trading in the pocket. I do not want to see Caio Borralho trading in the pocket. I got to make that crystal clear. We've got another comment here. Let's see. Did Abus get a treadmill since the bus has no gas? Ha ha ha. Oh, that's a good one. Now, Rodrigo Nascimento taking on Don'Tale-Mayes in a rematch that we never thought would come to fruition, but here we are in 2023, and we've got a situation where Rodrigo Nascimento, he's riding a winning streak, I believe. Tanner Boser, some split decision victories that are controversial, and he's taking on Don'Tale-Mayes, who has beaten basically the corpse of Andrei Arlovsky. That's a gift matchup at this stage in anybody's career at heavyweight. Don'Tale-Mayes, the guy is a physical specimen and can throw hands, but the precision's not there. The fight IQ isn't there. And the skill, when it comes down to it, the in-fight decision-making is what has cost Don'Tale-Mayes throughout his career. And in this spot against Nascimento, he's fighting Nascimento, who's not an athletic heavyweight. He's got a jiu-jitsu game. He doesn't have a great gas tank. He's there, and he is going to look to get his jiu-jitsu going, and that's a big advantage here against Don'Tale-Mayes. So I see the potential for Mayes to crack Nascimento on the feet. Of course, these are heavyweight fighters, but the longer this fight goes, it gets sloppy, it gets dangerous, it gets volatile. I don't think this one's going the distance, but I think that the same outcome is the likely outcome in Rodrigo Nascimento to get this fight done via submission. And you're right, Abus gassed on the, well, if you want to call it PFL, the regional scene. I know those guys are getting paid millions of bucks, but yeah, Abus, and they didn't have the stringent drug testing over there as well. So you got to wonder what you're getting. Nascimento is going to be the pick here. Now let's get serious here. Let's talk a fight that has been up and down my timeline. I'm seeing a lot of strong takes here. Gabriel-Bonfim taking on Nicholas Dalby. Now, one of the free plays I put out I think it was October 6th. Now we're in November. Gabriel-Bonfim at minus 325. Now he's sitting at minus 625, also at minus 650 at some books. And he's taking on Nicholas Dalby, who's closing in on his 39th birthday. And you watch back the fight footage, and that's one thing that I have to point out. What does the fight footage tell you? And it tells me Gabriel-Bonfim You watch back the Trey Waters fight. There have been others. Trey Waters had a 77-inch reach and also has gone on to rattle off 2 consecutive victories after losing to Gabriel Bonfim. But um, stylistically, this fight is looking pretty good for Gabriel Bonfim in Brazil, co-main event of the evening. And he's taking on a fighter who's going to be, I believe, Dalby's only 2 weeks out from his 39th birthday. And Dalby, we know, he can put it all together. He can wrestle. He has some striking. He's durable. He, besides the Jesse Ronson fight, which I tweeted earlier today and retweeted, that Dalby, yes, he has been submitted. We've seen that by Jesse Ronson, but it went down as a no contest. Bonfim, you watch him on the feet, though. He does seem tentative, especially his defense. He has almost, I'm not going to say it's James Vick level defense, but he tends to scoot his neck and head backwards and doesn't really move off the center line. Will get in and get out, and he seems very tentative on the feet. I can see that he wants this fight on the mat and he wants to lock up a submission, and that will be live here and could potentially be live here early, as it's happened many times in the past. Look out for the guillotine of Gabriel Bonfim. I know that Nicholas Dalby, he's a true veteran of the game, a seasoned veteran, and he's a fighter who's been preparing for this moment. He's performed and shined in Brazil many times in the past. But then you also look at Dalby's recent competition, and he's fought fighters who are in their mid-30s, mid to late 30s. Gosh darn it. He fought Claudio Silva, who was at the end of his road a long time ago. And man, Dalby, yes. Does he have a path to victory? Yes. Just about every fighter does. And that's the thing. I don't come out here making just lock. That's not who I am. I will look at both sides of the fight and give you an honest assessment. We talk paths to victory and we talk paths to defeat. So this is a long-term game here. This isn't a where we put all of our chips and we make 10, 20 unit plays here. We're honest with ourselves, and that's one thing about MMA Twitter, and you watch YouTube videos, etc. And folks, they want to make a pick with deep conviction and tell you you're a pile of manure if you are picking the other side, etc. That's not who I am. I don't deal in those certainties and use vulgarity, and that's just, I don't play. Homie, don't play that, as they say. So the pick's going to be Gabriel Bonfim, and I believe that at minus 325, that was a solid line there. But we'll see how the fight plays out, and Bonfim could potentially win this fight via submission. That's probably the most likely outcome here. But also, if we're honest with ourselves, that this fight could get extended, and Dalby at he's going to be 39 in a couple of weeks. So I believe that Bonfim having a full fight camp here, that this should test the mettle of Bonfim if it goes deep. But give me Gabriel Bonfim to win. I had to get that off my chest. I appreciate your candidness there in the comments section as well. Thank you. Do you think we need more from Mayes? The only thing I've seen from Mayes was Rip Johns. Oh yeah, well, that's true. John Jones going back to the well here. He's going to have a long road to recovery here. And then what's going to happen with the Pavlovich Aspinall fight? And then Miocic will be close to 43 years old. Very strange things that are going off there. Shady, you're back. Thank you for popping in. I hope you're enjoying, if anybody's watching the football game right now. I believe the Steelers were winning, but we'll see how that ends up playing out. So enjoy the NFL action if you have anything on it. And also, if you come back to this video, welcome aboard. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel and also liking the video, that's a big help for us over here. And that's one thing I try to do, is an honest assessment every time out. And I don't deal in certainties. Never have, never will. Main event of the evening. We've got Jailton Almeida taking on Derek Lewis. And one thing that was pretty darn close to a certainty that this fight is not going the distance. I I put out a video breakdown of this fight maybe about a week and a half ago or so, and I profess that this may be the shortest heavyweight bout in UFC history. And look what happened. They opened, fight doesn't go the distance at minus 3,000. When was the last time you saw that? It's been a while. And I remember even Mark Hunt versus Frank Mir. I remember that being like minus 800 or so. So Jailton Almeida minus 485. Derek Lewis plus 370. Derek Lewis, folks were lining up last time out to fade Derek Lewis against Marcos Rogerio de Lima. And look what happened. Now, this fight, Derek Lewis wasn't supposed to be here. This was Curtis Blades, his opportunity to take on Jailton Almeida. And Derek Lewis got the call. And now he also was arrested a few days ago. I believe it was last Wednesday, doing 136 miles an hour and miles per hour in a 50. And he's got a lot on his mind. But when that octagon door closes, I have no doubt he'll be ready to fight. And he could be ready to land a seminal blow here. And it only takes one against Jailton Almeida, who we've seen get knocked out on the regional scene. And I don't trust Jailton Almeida's chin. I don't trust many heavyweights, their chins against Derek Lewis when they're fighting him. But you need to have a mixed bag. You need to be able to take the fight to the mat. You need to be able to lock horns, drain the energy of Derek Lewis, soften up that body that Derek Lewis, the abdomen is his weak point. Also, we've seen many times Cyril Gahn and many others work the body. But Almeida, he's going to be looking to find a submission here and should try to do so as soon as he can. I don't want to see him playing around here, playing with his food. And that's one thing Jailton Almeida has a tendency to do. We've seen him play with his food at times. So give me Jailton Almeida to win this fight inside the distance. And Derek Lewis, always live for a knockout. Always live for a knockout. I put out the video before doing this breakdown specifically for the Jailton Almeida Derek Lewis fight, and spoke at length about how I believe that under 2.5 would be a decent play if we got a solid number. Granted, I didn't think fight doesn't go the distance would sit at minus 3,000. That was unexpected, but I would look for Almeida via submission. That's the obvious play here, but folks have been banking on Almeida to win via knockout for a while here, because he, at times we've seen Almeida take position over submission, and he'll ride timeout in certain positions. And Lewis, at this point in his career, I don't think he's going to be fighting the choke much. I don't think he'll fight the choke much. And I'll be picking Jailton Almeida to get this done inside the distance. Looking forward to this one. Looking forward to this fight card. Almeida has one entry, front kick to the face into a double leg. It's worked a bunch of times, but do you think it's against non-competent opponents? Yeah. I think that this is a level up where now Derek Lewis, look what he is now. Granted, he's the gatekeeper of the heavyweight division as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, closing distance against Derek Lewis is a dangerous proposition. You need to be willing to risk it all. And that's basically what he's going to have to do, Almeida. It might be a few scary moments. We saw, you remember Curtis Blades against Derek Lewis, and Curtis Blades was trying to close that distance. And oh man, I still hear the groans in my head from Curtis Blades when he was regaining his consciousness after Derek Lewis landed that uppercut. So Derek Lewis always live to land that fight-ending blow. But give me Jailton Almeida to win this fight inside the distance, and to do so by submission. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Looks like we're closing in on 45 minutes here for the breakdown. If you wouldn't mind liking the video and subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment down below, that's a big help for us as we continue to build this channel, and I appreciate you. So thanks again everybody, and have a great rest of your night, and go get what's yours. Let's do this. Weigh-ins tomorrow. Get ready.